Thank you for joining Jacob City Fishing, where the goal is learning to live in the great outdoors found as we walk outside of our homes into nature and society. Colossians 1:15 through 23. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. And you, who once were alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, he is now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death, in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach before him. If indeed you continue in the faith, stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel that you heard, which has been proclaimed in all creation under heaven, and of which I, Paul, became a minister. Paul fundamentally understands that the character and being of Christ are what's at stake in the conversation with the Christian Colossians. The opponents are trying to change what Christ did. So in order to start things off in this letter, in this hymn, we really get to know more about who Christ is. And in this particular place, we see that Christ is the creator of all things. You know, not just heaven, or not just earth, but heaven and earth, visible and invisible, whether it's thrones, dominions, rulers, or authorities, any type of authoritative structure in heaven or on earth, everything has been created through him and for him. Now, there's a lot of argument right now, and there has been for quite some time, that, you know, if you begin with God, there's no way that you can begin with science. However, that logic is problematic on so many levels. The Bible clearly states that the beginning of knowledge is the fear of the Lord. The beginning of wisdom, instruction, all of those things begin with the fear of the Lord. If we want true wisdom and knowledge, we have to start with him and filter everything through it. And that includes science. And it doesn't negate science. We still use and understand physical things. If you go to something like the Creation Museum and actually look at the articles created by those doctors, PhDs in various fields, you'll see they deal with science. They just begin with the truth that God is real, that Christ created all things, and everything's created by him, for him, and through him. Now that influences us today in many ways. First and foremost, it's the Christian worldview. Wisdom begins with Christ. He doesn't take a sidestep with it. And, we look at creation and some people say, well, there's time in Genesis 1 for evolution. There isn't. There's so many problems with that, particularly around when death came into the world. If death came before sin, then Genesis 1 is a lie. And those that are proponents for evolution in any form, either the gap theory or whatever the case may be, really have a conundrum there. And my problem, I think, in that regard is that it really changes how to look at Scripture and where to begin within our lives. Do we begin with science and then interpret Scripture? Or can we honestly, truthfully say that Christ created everything in 6 days and rested on the seventh, that God did that? And with that said, that's how we need to filter through the Christian worldview as we look in this world. Do we begin with Christ and say he created all things, he knows all things? If I want to go get my car fixed, I don't go to my cousin who's never worked on a car before in his life to fix my car. I go to an expert. If I am working on data or technology or on a computer of some sort, I want to go to somebody that knows what they're doing in order to get a repair completed correctly and efficiently. I don't go to somebody that doesn't know anything about a topic in order to get what I need done. Same thing with life. God created everything. He created all the authorities, the rulers, everything. We shouldn't be going outside of God first before we make a decision on how to handle our lives, where to find wisdom, and how to perceive what this world should be like. So the big question for you today is, where do you get wisdom? Do you begin with Christ and His Word, the one that created everything anyway, social structures, authorities, everything? Or do you go to the non-expert, the one that's just trying to figure it out because he's human and he's trying to put pieces together? And there may be some truth there, but in reality, it has nothing to do with the Lord. Do you think your methods for living this life are sustainable, accurate, efficient, and have the outcomes that truly matter? What is the source of your biblical worldview, or non-biblical worldview, for that matter, if you're not going to Christ? And do you go to God first? Thank you for taking a moment to consider what God has to say during your adventure outdoors. Please click the subscribe button below, along with the notifications button on the YouTube channel, so you learn how to survive and thrive in these great outdoors.